talk about the difference between indirect communication and when it is and isn't used for white supremacy culture. I researched the unwritten rules of work for working class and neurodivergent people, and one of those unwritten rules is speaking indirectly. People from working class backgrounds tend to be very direct. It has a lot to do with their jobs having a lot of physical safety concerns. Also, people who are neurodivergent are also very direct because they do not read contextual cues the same way neurotypical people do. A lot of people hate this unwritten rule, and a lot of people have tied it to the tenets of white supremacy culture, which was in the second paper of my dissertation. This is a framework by Tima Okun and Kenneth Jones from the 90s. And a lot of people talk about how indirect communication can be used for this one right here, right to comfort, and avoidance of open conflict. And whenever I talk about this, inevitably somebody shows up in my comments saying, but in Asia, they're very indirect, so what about that? We can get into how white supremacy has become a global phenomenon due to colonization and how even minorities can act in white supremacy, similar to how women can act in patriarchal interests. But what I want to talk about here is what is the difference between somewhere with an indirect communication style and white supremacy culture, particularly in workplaces. A lot of this has to do with who knows the rules. In cultures where everyone speaks indirectly, there are understood and shared meanings for indirect phrases. You are in Japanese business culture and someone says, that might be difficult. Everyone understands that means no, we're not doing that. There's a shared cultural knowledge about how they're communicating and everybody knows what's going on. That doesn't mean there's not nuances based on class, region, etc. Where it becomes a problem and where it turns into these poisons, when it's vague, it's not understood, and it's not translating to the people in the workforce. If you have a manager in corporate America who tells you to work on your executive presence, there's not a one-size definition for what that means, and that is mostly known what they mean within that class group. Maybe. Doesn't mean it's never confusing, especially if you're in that class group and neurodivergent. Oftentimes, and I hear this a lot from my clients, and the reason I'm talking about this is it recently came up in my live call on my Unwritten Rules School, that when you push your manager and ask, what do you mean by executive presence? What do you mean I need to work on building my relationships? Won't give you specifics. And sometimes that can be because the upper class values autonomy and individualism, and they might think they're coaching you into figuring out for yourself. But for people on the receiving end of it who aren't from that culture, it feels like, so you don't even know what you're talking about. You see, these are culture clashes. When they're never addressed, that's when we get into a toxic culture. This kind of culture fuels classism, sexism, racism, ableism, all the isms, because the whole premise of this culture is to exclude. In genuine indirect communication cultures, the indirectness serves for communication because people know what it means, generally. In white supremacy culture, the vagueness serves power structures. The manager gets to avoid the discomfort of saying, when you disagreed with me in front of the VP, that threatened my authority. Because that would require them to examine their own feelings and reactions, which is also not encouraged in white supremacy culture, because that goes against objectivity, pretending you don't have feelings and subjectivities. Also supports power hoarding, which is keeping the power in one group, the paternalism of making the decisions that impact everybody else without them being involved. See how it's all connected? So one form of communication is about connection and understanding. The other is about maintaining comfort for the people in power and maintaining their power, washing their hands of liability, because if they told you that you need to work on your executive presence, but they never outlined what that means, well, they gave you quote-unquote feedback and now it's not their fault. These are the types of conversations we are having in Unwritten Rules School. I have a sale going on right now where if you join the annual plan, which brings this down to $12 a month, you can also save $365 via getting a free coaching session with me, and this fall, I'll mail you a physical copy of my book that I signed. Because I am one human with limited resources and I'm about to move out of the country, you can only do this for 8 more people, and they have to sign up by August 22nd. Link is in my bio. Let me know if you have questions in the comments.